Welcome Dr. DeVita and anyone else who may be watching this to the final video of EDL 558. This is the module 5 and 6 response video, responding to rules for radicals and I guess the culminating discussion. Um, First off, the first question, because I sort of broke it down into 4 questions, responding to the prompts, what are your reactions to the ideas sharing rules for radicals? First off, the book is old. It's from 1971, so admittedly it speaks more of my language than the more contemporary writings in our textbook. And I just sort of picked out 3 quotes to illustrate how my reactions in the books resonated with me. The first is if the real radical finds that having long hair sets up psychological barriers to communication and organization, he cuts his hair. And this just goes to show that how social justice and how activism is just more than a fashion. It actually becomes a particular way of thinking and way of acting, and the proverbial make change by going through the front door with a briefcase, as opposed, has its place just as much as people who oppose it in a more aesthetic way. The second is I believe it's more relevant today, specifically with the Trump election of 2016 and a very specific conservative movement we have is blue collars, which are the workers. If we don't encourage them to form alliances with us, they'll move to the right. And we see, I think, a lot of the division that we have today is this. The workers have moved to the right, while people on the left have moved more into the privileged economic class, the proverbial leftist liberal. The last on this page kind of ties into the next part of the question. He states that justice, morality, law, and order are mere words when used by the haves, which justify and secure their status quo. So instead of elaborating on that, I'm just going to go into the next part. You can make it fun. Every time I say the word status quo, take a shot. But I essentially took one long paragraph, broke it down into 3 parts to explain, what I took away from the text. I'm well aware that the text was a practical guide to activism and organization, but the main thing I took away from the text is this idea of power. He starts, therefore, the haves want to maintain the status quo and the have-nots to change it. The haves develop their own morality to justify their means of repression and all other means employed to maintain the status quo. He continues, the haves usually establish laws and judges devoted to maintaining the status quo. Since any effective means of changing the status quo are usually illegal and are unethical in the eyes of the establishment, have-nots from the beginning of time have been compelled to appeal to a law higher than man-made. Which, watch some sovereign citizen videos on YouTube, not just for fun, but to understand that idea of laws being man-made. Because he talks a lot about morality in this book, and that's of great interest to me, and how morality is used. And, we're talking about the haves and the have-nots here, but he talks about has a little want more class, which are the complacent people in the middle who aren't willing to act because they don't want to sacrifice a little bit that they have, and they want to move to the next class, and how they also support the morality, the genealogy of morality of the powerful people, as Nietzsche would say. He then says that then when the have-nots achieve success and become the haves, they are in the position of trying to keep what they have, and the morality shifts to change the location of their power pattern. So essentially, this just explains to me everything about like social justice. People who want power use morality to achieve power. People who have power use morality to keep it. And, that fight that keeps going on and on. Alinsky proceeds after this quote to talk about how during Gandhi, how he had a message of passive resistance. And as soon as the they secured independence from the British, the Indian Congress actually outlawed passive resistance. This tool that they used, this moral tool that they had to achieve independence, was now against the law. It was a crime. And this just shows how power, corrupts absolutely. Again, the book was practical, a guide to organization, but this is what stood out to me. As Alinsky would say, this is my bag. But again, I'm a square. Question 2, I'll make these briefs because I know I'm running out of time. What commitments can you make about ally actions that you can take in regards to your privileged identities? Essentially, I can take personal responsibility as an ally in my day-to-day representation. At the age 41, I'm probably not going to pick up that political activist torch and organize, but I can consciously do these things. I could not humor or placate racist, sexist, homophobic, ableist jokes and discussions. A reading earlier in the chapter talked about how a person would casually laugh at that just to blend in. But she didn't think of herself as participating in those. Well, I'll let the free market of ideas weed these out, just not humor these people. I'll engage with underinformed people, non-threatening, not shouting, but, with underinformed people with these theories and ideas that I've learned from this course. Because I think they're interesting enough to captivate people's interest if they're not beat over the head with them. I can expand my social circle and make a more diverse world my own personal norm. Therefore it's not like a novelty that I'm talking about. It's just, that's the world I live in. And the most importantly, and the one where young people drop the ball, is I can just vote, especially on the regional levels for ally candidates, like flush out all those old people with all those old ideas, fresh blood. I think optimistically we're seeing that now. We're at the 7-minute mark, so I'm going to wrap up here. Which marginalization populations do you envision working with and why? Unfortunately, there's an individual identity politic in contemporary social justice issues. So therefore, like most people, I'd probably work to improve the groups I already belong to. And this is typically low socioeconomic status populations, people poor, people like myself who sort of missed the starting gun economically in life and failed to launch. My graduate entrance essay was wrote on non-traditional students. I'd like to focus on their experiences, specifically first-generation non-traditional students. And the module on disabled individuals really made me rethink the idea of disabled people and disabled students. So I'd like to learn about that. In conjunction, with my recognizing my biases and minimizing my complacency and privilege, I think this is a novel social justice goal, to improve the situation for this demographic. I'd like to say thanks for the course. It was by far more enlightening than I ever thought that it would be. I had a lot of resistance and reservations about it. But thank you very much, Dr. DeVita. And I hope to have you in another course.